The topic for today's discussion is building human capital through apprenticeships. We have two eminent speakers who have got decades of experience in managing human capital and developing it for their respective organizations. And I would look forward to kind of listening to their expert views on this particular subject. Our first panelist for today's session is Ms. Mansi Das. Mansi is an astute HR professional and certified assessor with 20 plus years of rich experience in the areas of succession planning, competency mapping, design thinking, L&D, R&R, and other organizational development initiatives. She holds a master's degree in personal management and industrial relations from Utkal University, and also did an executive development management program from XLRI. Presently, she is working as a group HR head in Vikas Group since 2010 and has been involved in group's endeavor for achieving multiple awards in both national and international forums. Welcome, Mansi, for the session. Our second panelist for today's session is Mr. Sanjay Jain, CHR of Polyplastics Industries Limited. Sanjay is an engineer by qualification and a people manager by choice. He has worked in management consulting for organizational restructuring, business process re-engineering, HR process architecture, supply chain management, operational excellence, and quality systems implementation. Talent acquisition and retention has been his key responsibility over the last decade of work experience and corporate HR for major greenfield projects. He has recruited expats and senior levels for both in India as well as overseas. Thank you, Mr. Jain, for joining the session.
Thank you and welcome.
Before we move ahead with the discussion with our panelists, I would just like to set the context for today's discussion. The human capital, basically, in a broader sense, is nothing but collection of the knowledge, skills, abilities, intelligence, training, and competencies possessed by an individual. And collectively, all these qualities of individuals put together basically helps organization with their human capital. This entire discussion today is going to revolve around the auto and auto ancillary sector as to how we are kind of helping this particular sector, or how this particular sector is managing and building the future workforce for their respective organization. Before we move to the questions, if we were to look at the auto and auto ancillary industry, okay, currently this particular industry contributes to around 7% of the country's GDP and nearly about 50% of the overall manufacturing output. If we were to look at the Automobile Mission Plan 2026, which is a collective vision of the government of India, as well as the automobile and auto ancillary companies, it is expected the current workforce that this particular sector employs is about close to 30 million plus. And with the Automobile Mission Plan, it is expected to employ anywhere around 50 million plus by 2026. Now, this clearly means that there is going to be a big demand for skilled youth for the organization. And it is the need of the hour that the organization start building this future demand from today onwards. The question is basically, can the degree-linked apprenticeship programs help organizations build this future talent for their respective organizations? Because one side we see that there is definitely going to be demand and the government initiatives of demand for the skill because of the government initiatives, because of the overall economy which is growing. And because of this, is this the right time to start building building the right skill sets and investing in human capital for our future requirements is the answers that we will try to get from our eminent panelist today. So that brings me to the first question for the session, and this question is for you, Mansi. I just wanted to currently understand what is the current landscape of talent in your organization, the current talent, and how do you see the talent requirements are going to shift in next 3 years or next 5 years, So, yeah.
Suhail, thank you so much for setting the context. As you rightly mentioned, auto sector is completely at the, I would say, at the helm of affairs as far as contribution to GDP is concerned. And if I talk of specifically the scene of talent in our set of companies, well, very, very buoyant, very volatile set of people. And in terms of, total talent pool that we will have, mostly engineers by profession, and very, very innovative set of people who are having a huge eagerness to learn, contribute, and millennial workforce, younger talent. We've seen a significant shift in percentage of people whom we had within the age group of below 35 years in the last 5 years, dramatically increased. So it's a even mix now of a lot of younger people and older ones, but yeah, adding to the versatility of the talent pool that we have. So that's how the current pool is. Yeah, going forward, I think in terms of the skill sets and talent, skill mapping that we are looking at, with the EV coming in, with the whole customer preferences changing in such a volatile manner, and also I would say a lot of demand from the sustainable mobility solutions point of view, and adoption of digital skills. So there is a need to shift, for the needle to shift in that direction of adopting digitization, of being able to be innovative and very impromptu at times. So that's how I see the talent needs moving.
Sure. Thanks, Mansi. Mr. Jain, what's your viewpoint? I mean, how do you see the current talent landscape in your organization?
Okay, thank you again, Suhail and TeamLease team. See, the auto and the auto ancillaries, or the tier 1s and tier 2s, are linked to the same objective. Now, if you see, as compared to a lot of sectors, the auto sector is into a lot of challenges, mainly because of the government's continuous intervention towards upgradation of technology front. And these government regulations have forced the industry to adopt and spend a lot of in terms of upgrading their own investments to meet the norms. Now, from Bharat 4 to Bharat 6, BS6, globally, if you see any transition between the two levels of these norms, takes about 7 to 10 years, whereas in India it has been rolled out in a span of 3 years. Now that has brought in a huge amount of investments which the organizations are forced to do. And while the market size in terms of the number of vehicles being produced and sold in India is much lower as compared to the global counterparts, but one has to see that what is the effective utilization of the infrastructure versus the automobiles that we are selling against. So a large amount of workforce today, post-COVID, has looked into the mobility in a very different way. Now, that has also changed the way auto companies used to be thinking pre-COVID and post-COVID. And post-COVID, the focus of the government on phasing out the fossil fuel, the recent statement of Mr. Nitin Gadkari, the Honorable Minister, saying that in the next 5 years, petrol vehicles will vanish. Now, that's a huge statement, and look its impact on India. If that is going to happen, the talent shift that we're talking about, the skilled manpower that we're talking about, you said 50 million people. I will not be able to comment even beyond. Will you be able to get even 5 million trained people for the new challenges that is going to come into India.
Got it.
And so the talent word is very, very misnomer when we talk about, because what we are talking about as the future requirements, that shortage is going to be enormous. And when we talk about bridging this gap through an apprentice or a degree apprentice program, uh, it is a much larger task, and it cannot be done by a handful of companies or a handful of institutions which have dipped in this work of a degree apprentice program. It's not adopted, or it's not being part of even a national education policy. NEP also does not lay emphasis more on the educating from the apprentice side.
Absolutely.
Rather, it is only again talking. So one thing which I have always said is, going forward, the word skill will become more and more important versus a degree.
Got it.
And if you also see, more than 50% of the seats in engineering colleges today are vacant. Whereas all the vocational colleges, which are offering recognized vocational courses, you don't get seats.
Correct. So thanks, Mr. Jain. I think pretty valid point. And one thing I think from your comments and Mansi's comment, I'm able to kind of pick up is, obviously there has been shift in the entire industry. The demand is going to change the way we are. The demand for products, and especially with the EVs coming in and the government's vision of obviously interventions from BS4 to BS6 and the time span that you mentioned, Mr. Jain. So this clearly indicates that we need to reskill our existing people and start building the future talent pipeline, so that there is no disruptions in the business. Taking the cue from here, Mansi, I just wanted to understand from you, if we agree that there is going to be shortage and the demands and the shifts because of technological interventions, government policies, we would be required, and to obviously the changing preferences on the customer side also. There is a new demand which will get generated, which will for that you will require separate skill sets. So wanted to understand from your point of view, Mansi, what is Vikas Group doing at an organizational level to kind of address these challenges,
Still a wonderful question. I think I can say that we've adopted apprenticeship as a big step, to fulfill this skill gap. Every year, we almost appoint at least nothing less than 800 apprentices across our locations. And our aim is to give them on-the-job training, mentoring, etc., which is a part of the apprentice curriculum any which ways, besides the classroom trainings on certain behavioral aspects, which are very much, very important to help them become employable and continue to remain employable in the times to come. So and after the tenure, I mean, absorbing them wherever appropriate, or at least making them industry ready. So that's something which we've been doing for the last, I think, almost 10 years now. We've been one of the early birds into this program. So therefore, that part of our activity continues to gain ground. But in addition to that, I think we are continuously in discussions with academia as well on how to partner with them for internship programs and how to catch this talent young, I would say. So these are a couple of initiatives. I would say that, I mean, the evolution in this whole journey has been ongoing. We're learning as we grow and trying to adopt newer things.
So rightly said, Mansi, and I think apprenticeship globally, if you ask me, has proven one of the effective methods or effective strategies that governments have adopted, especially the European countries, where the entry-level workforce basically enters formal employment through an apprenticeship program. So rightly put. Mr. Sanjay, I just wanted to understand from your perspective. Obviously, I mean, your organization is also almost 5 decades into this particular business, and it has seen a lot of changes. What is it that your organization is doing to kind of meet the future skill requirements?
See, traditionally being more than 5 decades old, the focus of apprentice was limited through ITIs. And because you were present in locations where local ITI colleges used to be there, so what used to happen is those training placement officers used to come and visit your factories and request you that if you can provide the older version of the apprentice programs, which used to be about a 6 months duration, wherein they require a kind of an on-the-job training, and so that they can complete the 6 months, and then that gets recognized as a formal curriculum to get the ITI certificate awarded. Now, the focus for us and the way what we are talking about the current apprentice programs changed when the government introduced the concept known as NEEM. But again, it was taken up only as a substitute to a formal contract labor. And we did not implement NEEM only for this reason, because the objective of the government was to increase the skill of the people and to increase their qualification through an enhancement route. And the other input was that if you are committing resources for that, you get to use them as a contract labor for about 8 hours. But you need to provide those 2 or 3 hours of education so that those people learn. Which is what, when we found out how the NEEM has been implemented in most of the organizations, we only found out it's just a substitute of contract labor, and the all placement agencies or the so-called official agencies imparting these names were only talking to you that it's a substitute and it's an economic version for you. And that's where as management we differ. But when NAPS came in, we adopted NAPS primarily for the reason because, see, we as an industry have to take a larger objective and build on the developing of the people. So essentially why we have implemented NAPS is not whether it gives any financial benefits, but for the sole reason we want to give back to the society. We are encouraging at all our 9 manufacturing units to particular focus on NAPS, wherein one of the criteria which we have taken is on the economic front. So we are preferring females, we are preferring persons from the lower strata. And it requires a lot of communication and clarity because those people at the entry level is about, if you look at the basic requirement of 10th class, although it starts with the 6th class also, a person with that will not have emotional or knowledge-based maturity. So you need to make them understand a lot as to what they are going into, what the kind of career they can achieve if they complete and understand what's the degree or an apprentice program. The other thing that we have done is to develop what we say is the future leadership program, wherein right from 1 year's experience, we have mapped people for the future roles. Let's say the ratio would be 1 person out of about 20 or 30 odd people. So if we have 500 odd people, we'll pick up about 20 odd people there, 20 to 30 odd people, and then they will be mentored and given additional skill set so that they develop leadership capabilities. And in 3 to 5 years time, we should be in a position to uh, make them ready, at least for the section head or the number 2 in the section head program, which otherwise would be about 7 to 10 years time. So through this, what we are looking at is developing future leaders in about 3 to 4 years time.
Sure. So,
Also,
great. Sure,
just
sir.
last point,
Yes,
also
yes.
we partnered with other OEMs also. Let's say one of the proud programs that we were founder members, which was with Fiat Chrysler. They took it as part of the CSR initiative, and they collaborated with Symbiosis Pune, and they hired they took about 40 females exclusively from the very lower strata of the society, and they provided them a holistic training of 2 years. Eventually, that would be converted into a recognized diploma program. And Polyplastics partnered with the Fiat Chrysler, and we provided 2 batches of 3 months each duration for these 40 girls, out of which 20 came to our campus. And they have completed successfully these 2 years course. And we have seen the high level of transformation these 40 girls have got. Their parents are not even able to recognize them, that these were the same girls who had no background. And today they run AutoCAD, they make presentations, they can operate. Each of them have got a laptop, which none of their families would have even seen. And they are working now on the shifts. They are part of the day shifts only, morning shift, but they are working in the shop floor much more confidently than a majority of the contract labor that we take. In fact, we have deployed them in the quality side, and we are sure that after 1 year, they will replace all my supervisors in the quality department.
Oh, great, great. That's a fabulous initiative, and things that I can pick up from your point, Mr. Sanjay, is obviously you did mention about in the previous question, you did mention about the new education policy also, and I just wanted to take that point and kind of obviously the new education policy is expected to get implemented from this year onwards, and UGC is playing a very active role in that,
Yes.
and you will see a lot of reforms which UGC is also implementing, and degree linked apprenticeship basically. So integrating the on the job with a formal degree program and including that as a component in higher education and in a degree program is what the government is also trying to do. One thing you also mentioned was in your point was the overall diversity actually, so then my next question to Mansi is, Mansi, do you look at apprenticeship programs from deploying apprentices and driving the diversity agenda, whether it's gender, whether it is geographical, any other form of diversity?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really helped us drive that agenda equally well. We aim at hiring girls through diploma freshers. That we normally, our target pool is diploma freshers. So although the input there that's very, very limited in mechanical and electrical fields, however, since that is our entry point into the shop floor, so that remains a continuous focus area. Besides lateral hiring, I mean, which is a normal focus in terms of diversity, and even otherwise, I think to bring in the element of geographical diversity, whether it is bringing in people with special abilities, everything seems to be a very good platform for to be an input source at the time of entry level recruitment. This apprenticeship actually helps it more because there's a lot of focus training for this pool of people. So right from the dojo center training, which starts before they are put on the shop floor, giving them basic understanding of what the processes are, what parts we are into, etc., and what maintenance and safety rules, etc. So a lot of focus training goes into this pool of people, and therefore it becomes far more effective to drive our other parallel agendas as well. So it's been a huge help.
Sure. What's your viewpoint, Mr. Jain? Can organization drive their diversity agenda through an apprenticeship program as well?
Yes, definitely. See, to add to what rightly stated by Manasi is, see, in apprentice programs you can plan. A lot of contractual stuff you cannot plan because that's just based on the availability, and you have no choice. But apprentice programs, you can predetermine what's the mix that you want for a particular plant and then implement it through a planned route. So whether it is as we picked up in Pune when we identified the freight Chryslers, we could feel that girls can be given a job in which they are biologically much better. So we are into aesthetic parts. So where a visual appeal or a visual sense is far important. And traditionally, it's always felt that the female staffs have got a better connect with the eyes. So it gives a natural advantage for you to put that diversity by a program management, and it is not just a thought or a thing. You can plan that way, and then it becomes much more easier for the entire mix to happen. It's not happening overnight. It's happening through a regular program. You sensitize, you with the posh inputs coming in, you take care of these sensitive agenda beforehand by the HR, supervisory, and other things. You have to do a lot more then, so that when you are actually deploying, at that point of time, the so-called undercurrents are not there. The acceptability and a defined career path is already there. So
Got it.
diversity is not just gender; it is much more in a broader sense, and we are looking at, and it can also help in terms of the language barriers. So you can put in a diverse set of people at the shop floor. So one of the things which Mansi ji would also agree is during COVID, a lot of our plants suffered because we had only one set of language peoples in most of the plant. So if one festival comes, you have all the people moving away.
So a very valid point, a very valid point, and for all the people, those who are part of this session and those who are part of the industry would definitely agree to this. And also, I mean, you rightly put it that apprenticeship program helps us plan this particular diversity in advance, which is one of the biggest advantages, obviously, and so very well put. That brings me to the next question, Mr. Jain, for you basically. Do you already have a industry academia connect? So when we're talking about industry and academia connect, we are looking at what's the industry requirement from a curriculum perspective, tying up with an academic institution and doing this is one. And secondly, I mean, would you agree that it should not be just in the academics that we're talking about should not be only theoretical, but it should come with the skilling component, which is on the job training. So what's your
See,
viewpoint on this?
auto industry, particularly the OEMs, look at it. Maruti Suzuki, Honda, and the Hero Motorcorp, they already run these programs, and they have specific degree and diploma apprentices running already. But then that is a very, very limited sphere when we come to the industry part of it. Government has not promoted this in a bigger manner. Although we are working with three specific organizations through the industry academia, and we've also been representing through the Niti Aayog and to the Ministry of Skill, reskilling and skilling. Our first contract was with the Shri Vishwakarma Skill University, which is the SVSU. That's the only skill university promoted by Government of India. It has got a temporary campus at Sector 44 Gurgaon. Eventually, it will shift to its own campus in Haryana. Now, there, what we had done was, apart from just providing internships and absorbing the students, we are working with them to develop a course specifically on the plastic side, plastic processing side. So what it involves is investment in terms of setting up a working lab at their campus. The students who will join will have less of the theory and more of a practical content on the plastic science. So we would have to invest, apart from the equipment, in terms of the regular technical inputs by our staff to those students, by lectures, demos, and other things, and then providing those students from a 1 year to a 3 year degree program regular exposure at our plants. So that's a big initiative. It requires approvals from various government bodies, which is still under the process.
Sure.
And then we have also tied up with the New Delhi Institute of Management and Dr. Vishwa Bansalji's HM, as also the GLA University in Mathura. So these are the other two where we have formally done tie-ups, wherein they provide opportunities for us to interact with specific batches of the colleges, and we in turn act as mentors for those batches.
Sure.
And provide them whatever inputs they require, whether it is mentorship assistance, uh, technical assistance, their visit to our plants to understand and all that,
Sure.
without any expectations that those students would definitely have to serve our company. So that is the bonus that we have provided, that since it's the developmental part, we do not want to bind them that if they want to work with us, that's fine. But that is not the part of the contract. So the institutes are free to offer their placements wherever best suits them.
Great. Great, Mr. Jain. Mansi, I mean, from an industry academia partnership point of view, I mean, would just like to understand the initiatives at Vikas Group level also, that so industry academia is like I mentioned, it's one way to kind of bridge the skill gap. So what are the current initiatives Vikas Group is driving? Wanted to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think Mr. Jain has answered this very well. A lot of OEMs are doing. I wouldn't say that we are at that kind of a matured state of partnership. Yeah, as and when, I mean, wherever we are able to do an academia tie-up, whether it is through special projects, whether it is through internship opportunities, we have been doing. But honestly, I mean, the ask would be more to academia this time, that it's always put as industry academia. That means like industry takes the first step towards moving closer to academia. So what the industry gets in return is, of course, the branding part, which you get to brand yourself in front of the youngsters who are aspirants, and at the same time you are able to showcase a lot of these initiatives and pitch them for various government benefits as well. But academia, I think it's high time for academia to step forward and reach out to industry as a part of their it's a huge call out for faculties to be able to connect with industry and really understand how they can make their curriculum less theoretical and more skill based, and what they can do to probably incorporate learnings or the employability characteristics, which industry is seeking. In That would be a huge thing, because industry taking the first step, trying to do everything for academia, that's been an age-old thing. I think all of us have been doing our bit. So right now it's a huge call out for academia to take the step and really reorient themselves and think of how do they bring in those elements of critical thinking, innovation, teamwork, communication into their curriculum and bring that consciousness and that pool of people who are aspirants, because we will have our limited focus, but it's it needs to be a much more two-way traffic, I would say.
No, very rightly pushed. I mean, I think what you're talking about, Mansi, is now going forward, the future is academia industry partnership rather than industry academia partnership. Very rightly put. And just wanted to touch our new degree apprenticeship program from our university is actually first step, and we're just trying to see if we are able to solve the problem through this, where actually, as you rightly put, the 30% component is on the overall degree program. If I look at 30% is only towards academic and 70% is on the job, So we are kind of obviously, I mean, when you have to increase the employability, skills as well as academics both play important role, and both have to be integral part of the degree program. It's just the weighted. So currently, if I look at the current degree program, they are more of academics actually, and that's where the terminology industry academia, because okay, you come with us, we'll write some curriculum, create some curriculum, but it's still focused on that theoretical component, and the skill cannot be acquired in classroom. Like I always say, if you have to learn to play cricket, you cannot learn it in the classroom. You have to go out in the field and learn to play. I mean, that's the skill that you will acquire. So very rightly put. Uh, just wanted to understand now, the skill gap has been often talked about while taking employment and employability. How big role you think an apprenticeship play in filling the skill gap? Mr. Jain, maybe your perspective. We keep talking about employment, we talk about employability, we talk about the skill gap which exists, but what role an apprenticeship would exactly play in filling this gap?
See, there are two major points. One, when you look at the industry requirements, apprentices can play only one small aspect of the skilling, which is the shop floor part of it. Primarily into the functions of quality, manufacturing, to a certain extent development or quality. Now, the industry as an entry-level requirement has got other functions also. And the biggest challenge in auto and auto ancillary sector is facing is the new age requirements. When it comes to the domain knowledge, which is the future, wherein you talk about automation, you talk about AI, you talk about machine learning, you talk about IT integration, because today the entire machines are very different. The same process of, let's say, molding, what the machines used to be available 20 years back and what they are today. When we go to the colleges, people are still talking about the older type of concepts, and we tell them if he walks into our shop floor, he'll be shocked because he will not even recognize anything what he has been taught about. So in essentially the first 6 months, he has to unlearn what he has been taught in the 3 to 4 years. So the skill gap, that way apprentices programs being run would definitely help a part of the industry requirements. And the overall thing as we are moving further is the 3 to 5 years period, auto sector will again transform to a new sector, new input requirements, which I don't think the either the academia or even the apprentice programs are geared up for. So that way the skill gap is going to further increase.
So what do you think, Mr. Jain, now since you have made this point that the basis, the inputs, the skill gap is further going to increase, what do you think should be the solution,
See,
or
the solution is again as what Manasi is driving is that you see the upgradation responsibility has to be taken up by the individual institutes. Now, how many ITIs? We have enough of them, private and government, have taken up initiatives to even upgrade their syllabus uh, of, let's say, which they've been running for about a decade old. You ask those students, they will still be talking about the same old faculty who will come with his notes written maybe 20 years back.
so
You
maybe
go to the laboratories, you will not even find any machinery which is representing the current technologies. Now, what is the fault of the student who is aspiring to be working in a tech center, but he takes admissions in an ITI and is forced to just spend time there? The faculty would not even know what a design thinking is. He will not even understand what are the intricacies involved in machine learning. He may even have never attended any knowledge management programs. Now the government is taking baby steps. Let's say Delhi government has done a bit to upgrade some of these places. But when you talk about pan India, I still have, let's say, there are 5 states that our management has put up plants. We still find, apart from a few metropolitan cities, the conditions outside, which is tier 2, tier 3 cities, is pretty bad. And all the colleges which are prevalent there, their entire focus is that, okay, boss, we have to provide degree. And after that, if placement, some of the things our students are faced, it is their luck. Our focus was to just earn the money and provide you a degree. That's all.
got it. So, what I take from your comments here, Mr. Jain, is basically there is a need to shift the curriculum and upgrade the curriculum. So, if I have to just kind of put it on a lighter note, I mean, the guys in ITIs, maybe are they still being, working on DC fans and carburetors, actually.
Institutes to start with and private institutes to relook at the curriculum. So a two-way kind of push, and government can be the single agency which can really put this pressure on both sides, either by making a rule book or through incentivizing. Either which ways it would work well. I think that's how we can
I
really.
just want to add slightly different note is the politicians at each state is mandating the local level of employment. Haryana has passed a law which is being challenged in the Supreme Court, and a lot of similar states are saying that you need to employ these much locals. Rather than that, they should be encouraging that we will provide you the trained institutes and you hire from those institutes, which can be local. Let the students come from anywhere. We are ready to say that, okay, for my plants in Haryana, provide me 10 institutes where I will source my all requirements for. But you train them in these areas. I'll just give you just support. I was just interviewing uh, a small entry level people, and I asked them today, tube light. Can you tell me what is the role the choke plays? People would have not even heard of, but today it's LED. So I asked them, पुराने जमाने में हमने देखा है ना वो चौक होता था, वो आज की LED वाले में कहाँ दिखता है? So, I mean, they could not even understand what we're talking about, because see, that is part of the technology.
Absolutely.
Now, LED and a conventional technology is very different. So this is where we were talking about and debating is that, see, apprentice today, if you teach them the old stuff, you wasted those 2 years for him.
Absolutely.
So it is better for him to just work and earn those 2 years and get upgraded by the industry itself, rather than spending that. At least 2 years he would have learned a lot of things by doing, and then supplement him with the knowledge base. So he becomes a trained apprentice rather than the reverse way, that he comes with a degree or a diploma and then he has to do a lot to first unlearn what has been taught to him.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with you, Mr. Jain, and very well put. And Mansi, as you rightly mentioned, what we need is basically on-the-job training as well as education with more weightage on on-the-job training, and equally important, education is equally important. But I think there is the demand that is going to get generated for the skill sets that, as I mentioned in my opening statement earlier, and Mr. Jain said that we won't be even able to touch, forget 20 million, we won't be able to kind of meet 5 million. So yes, I think it should be the collective effort of obviously all the institutions and the industry put together to kind of come up with these work integrated degree linked programs. So I definitely agree with you on that. My question, Mansi, again to you is basically, what prompted Vikas Group to hire apprentice for the first time, and what are the reasons that led you continue with the deployment of apprentices?
Uh, Honestly, I think apprentice we adopted due to government, a kind of enforcement that you really need to adopt. But by and by, we realized the merits of it, um, and we realized that by adopting this as a standard platform for bringing in talent, we are able to harness a couple of things. A, we have that time in hand to train them well and then absorb them on our shop floor. We are also able to ascertain within that time period whether they will be stable with us, what are their issues, what are the things that they need to be worked on, so that they can be better resources for the future. So we have that kind of an incubation period where we are also putting in a lot of effort, and from his side also we are able to see that strive, or I can say the passion to learn and try and contribute. So that gave that we realized as we went on, we realized that that was a very good step for us. Although we started with the government statutes being our primary driver, but we then worked on the program, and we've actually come a long way, right, from the way we started and what was the mode in which we started to where we are functioning right now. I think it's undergone a lot of change.
Thanks, Mansi. Question to you, Mr. Jain, just an extension to what I asked Mansi. I mean, if you have to summarize, obviously, the benefits or the merits of having apprentices, in 3-4 bullet points, I mean, what would those be,
See, again, the biggest thing on an apprentice is you know what you are getting, and you can choose what you want and what you plan. The second is you have those people as a direct connect with you. See, contract staffing, you lose that direct connect, and so it is essentially the people who are basically having allegiance to the contractor, and you have got a limited role in terms of developing them. Whereas in apprentice, it's like you get a raw hand and you can decide what you want to do out of it, and then invest accordingly to get the maximum value, not only for the organization but for the person also.
Got it.
The last is, uh, see, every industry or every activity has to also look into the social aspect. So while there will always be people with the higher value or the economic things, there would also be a lot of people which are the have-nots, and we should be responsible for their development. So the industry will always take I will say the socio-economic development to be the prime focus of employing apprentice rather than just the getting those people on the shop floor.
Got it. So, what I understand, I think from you, Mr. Jain, is, I mean, if you are able to induct them at a very early stage, you are able to groom them and train them and mold them maybe to the requirements of the industry. That's what. And Mansi, you mentioned you started as a government mandate because you have to do 2.5, but then over a period, definitely you started seeing the benefits because you started actually I'm sure you would have learned that you have started kind of you found a mechanism how your organization can build talent pipeline for your future requirement. One question which I have, and maybe any both of you can share your perspective. I keep meeting customers across the auto ancillary sector, and one of the concerns which most of the clients have, and I wanted your perspective also, is to how organizations can control attrition, in the organization. Now, attrition can be on the core employees, contractual employees, or as a matter of fact, even the apprentices today, and some organizations, some CHROs or head HRs that I've met are able to are trying to find out a solution in terms of how an attrition level specifically on an apprenticeship program can be controlled, how the attrition can be controlled for apprentices. So maybe Mansi, Sanjay, I mean, wanted to understand your perspective, how can organizations do that? Because I'm sure there are many HR colleagues who would want to know and exchange ideas on this particular point,
Okay, so I'll go first, Sanjay, with
Yes.
your permission.
Ladies first should always be our motto.
Yeah, attrition is a huge problem. I mean, at entry level talent, this is a huge problem. And I think industries who are part of this session and even otherwise would all agree that we keep doing all this compensation benchmarking to be able to remain competitive and keep giving them salaries. In spite of that, there is a lot of attrition. So primary thing, I guess, the new the new mindset which is like creeping into a workforce is for everything that they are doing or they are made to do or they are expected, they keep asking this question, what is it in this for me? And that's about it. So you need to constantly keep answering that, and it's not something which is permanent. Of course, giving them the ability to speak up, to do something innovative, something different, get recognized. Those are like baseline requirements. You need to have this. And there is universal thing. But yeah, if you are able to add as an add-on to this or top up to this, the element of education and constant learning, and thereby a platform for them to upgrade themselves and remain abreast with what is happening around them, with very contemporary knowledge base, with a lot of learning which is easy to understand, practically implement, and also the whole element of evolving or adding value to themselves basically, and thereby moving themselves closer to the talent value. So that's the whole thing, which we as employers, it's our responsibility, not only for apprentices, across the board for every talent that we have. We need to keep answering this for them. And as long as we continue to answer this, we remain in the race. Otherwise, great resignations are the obvious outcomes.
No, so rightly put. Obviously, organization needs to stay invested in the constant development of these set of people, because they have come in as apprentice. They have high expectations from the organization, and rightly put. I think linking degrees to apprenticeship program. I mean, it's not that they are basically a worker. Basically, you are actually acquiring higher education at the same time you are earning. It's an opportunity to acquire skills, acquire higher education, and at the same time, I mean, reduce your expenses, cover up for your expenses, education expenses. I mean, that's how it should be put. Mr. Jain, your views. How what would be your comments around this to the peers who are there in the audience. I mean, how to control attrition especially for the apprentices.
See, if you can say that you have a formula to control attrition, I think that's the biggest flaw or a statement of intent that will come across.
It's always trial and error. Actually, you
Yes.
keep experimenting. Today it's working, maybe tomorrow it may not work.
But one thing now, which I've been doing now, see, the need for what is known as the proper communication has gone up drastically. With social media exploding during the COVID period, now information is available. I'll say you are bombarded by the information. Half of that may not be relevant, and half of that may actually do more harm to you. So what is needed is to give proper, concise information about the entire process, whether it is skill, knowledge, everything. So, I mean, Mansi would also agree, we are working on training programs, which we are now being asked to make it bite size. So gone are the days where a 1 day or a 3 hour or a 6 hours, we're just looking at a 1 minute training program. Now, but that is happening. The industry is giving those kind of inputs. The second important thing that we are trying to do is, which eventually would lead to lower attrition, is which we always have been harping since our early days, is the concept of multi-skilling. While this is a very good word that we've been all using in our PPTs, it's only recently now we've started to understand what it can actually do. The difference is multi-skilling. When we had adopted earlier, we wanted person to be trained in multiple processes. Now that is not essentially an upgradation of the skill. Whereas what reskillings or multi-skillings that we are talking about now is, even if you are operating the same machine, you can you can have multi-skills by bringing in element of quality, which essentially would bring into the old concepts of just in time. You can train yourself into maintaining that machine. Then you bring in the concept of what has been known as the ownership. Now, the point is, everywhere we are talking about these things separately. The HR person used to say that, okay, you need to have ownership. How do I bring ownership? You have a training program known as Kaizens, just in time, being taught on the shop floors or seminars. But the relevance of that, and that is where we are trying to say that understanding the intent behind skilling is way different now as compared to what it was, using Mansi's word, the plain vanilla platform for the skilling or the apprentice things. So this is where we are trying to bring a value added content towards the person's job. Okay, 6 months you learn the operations, then you need to understand. We need to brief him. Dojo centers is the biggest advantage of any tier ones or tier twos. So he can understand the entire process, and then you can ask him, what have you learned now, next process or a previous process, or your interest revolves around being the owner of that machine. So there are ways and means a person can take his own interest and his own career progression. So he develops a holistic part.
Got it.
And that is all you can do. Attrition is something.
No, so I think very well put. I think if the organizations are able to understand the actual intent of skilling, and if they're able to communicate to the apprentices, I think is one thing. I think we are approaching the time, but anybody from the audience, if they have any question, then they can put it up in the Q&A box. We will try and address them if there are any questions from anyone. Okay. While the question comes in, I will just put my last question by the time we wait. How would you rate the skill and employability quotient of an apprentice, okay, after they complete the program? So maybe Mansi, you want to kind of how would you rate the skills and employability quotient after an apprentice has completed the apprenticeship period? So maybe if they started at 2 level or entry level, or maybe if you look at the NSQF level, okay, for example, an ITI guy would enter at NSQF level 4. So I mean, how would you kind of
It goes up dramatically to my sense. I mean, I would say that when we are taking in people, the employability is almost in a negative point. They just have a theoretical knowledge, but the ability to apply that theoretical knowledge into the job is very, very limited. So that is, on that's where they start. But by the end of the program, you can really visually see that the needle has moved, because they have learned the skills of working together, communicating, thinking, on innovatively on solutions, because there are a lot of parallel mechanisms which are already ongoing on the shop floor. So there are SGS schemes, there are Kaizen schemes which they are encouraged to participate. They're asked to present their ideas. So they have developed this ability to speak and at least express themselves, no matter, I mean, language could be anything, but express their thought process and logically explain why they are suggesting something. So all those elements of analytical thinking, problem solving, looking at a complex problem and ability to break it into smaller solutions and smaller pieces and then finding answers to it. So all those things they have clearly developed by the end of the apprenticeship period. So, and for us, we try and absorb the best of such people into our mainstream. But having said that, obviously, the scale at which we input and the scale at which the absorption takes place is definitely narrowed. So, but at least we are happy that we are able to put them, I mean, in a position that their employability quotient has gone much beyond.
Absolutely. I mean, you would actually make them employable, if not for your organization. Yes, they are employable for other organization.
Yes.
Mr. Jain, how would you rate, the overall skilling and the employability quotient after an apprentice completes the program?
See, I would even like to say that the formal inputs to auto industry is coming from the CPET, which is a higher route rather than just the ITIs. When you say that the Central Institute of Petrochemical Engineering and Technology, it's got 24 centers in India, which is there known as the Center for Skill and Technical Support, CSTS. Now, even students who pass out from CPET, wherein they are supposed to have a lot of industry, academia, and formal experience of getting trained in the industry as part of their curriculum. We regularly induct people from CPET, and they also have a big lag in terms of when they come to the formal jobs. And even with CPET, we see that having completed their course and then having given them 6 months of exposure, their attitude as well as the depth of their knowledge to pick up these skills dramatically changes. The difference is CPET versus other colleges or ITIs is the industrial climate or the academic climate, it's much better. At least they are more disciplined and they are more eager to absorb as compared to the other things.
Sure.
But overall, yes, any program which is addressing a formal increase in terms of the employability or the knowledge quotient will drive home the fact that your skill levels will improve dramatically.
Sure. So we have one question, and I think Mansi, Sanjay, one of you can just take it. The question is how we can improve the resourcing and development of an apprentice, wherein we see a lot of attrition in this sector, so that they can think of retention and find the right career. I think we covered this, but any additional comments, maybe from you, Mansi, Sanjay? So it's the same thing, the attrition,
Sure.
which we
Now it's
touched
your
upon.
turn.
Yeah, I think we've covered most of the points, and we
Yes,
said that
yes.
you see, attrition cannot be controlled just
Mm,
by one plain vanilla thing. But yes,
absolutely.
I would again like to highlight see attrition. If you have to control, you have to look into holistic development and commitment from the management side. It also requires a huge amount of training to the supervisors and to the line staff who are responsible for taking work out of apprentice and to train them simultaneously. Now, a lot of times we as an HR ignore this aspect wherein we are only looking at driving a lot of things from the apprentice, and we ignore whether the physical conditions, whether the working conditions, whether the behavioral aspect of the people who are supposed to encourage and train these apprentices, whether they are rightly addressed or not. So it is not just a one-way street, it is a holistic 360-degree development. And if you are excelling in 360 degrees, naturally the result will translate to a much lower attrition. And the focus should not be attrition. The focus should be what value you derive out of that apprentice till whatever time he works. And uh, this is where we have tend to put attrition much lower as an index for the top management. We are looking at the value in terms of what suggestions is he giving, whether he is getting trained much faster, whether he is learning and getting ready for actual usage much faster than what we've envisaged. So those are the critical areas that we try to track more rather than just the thing, because it's like a post-mortem. The patient is already dead. Now, whatever learning you can get, you will never be able to revive that patient. So attrition as a data should not be the entry point for me. It should be the last point. Okay, yes, my byproduct is the attrition data. That's all.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
just to
Mansi.
add one more point, I mean, what Sanjay ji has just mentioned very, very clearly, if you start evaluating apprentices on the basis of attrition, then you'll never be
Yes.
able to mobilize the program, never be able to take a buy-in from the senior management for this. But if you start with, I mean, with the assumption that there is going to be this much of attrition, it is just natural that you have a 50% attrition, 50,
It's
60,
part of the design itself.
70%. So it's part of the game, yeah.
Very rightly put, Mansi and Sanjay. It's part of the design, actually. Whatever, and whether it's an apprentice, attrition will stay. Whether it's an apprentice, core employee, contractual employee, any type of. So yeah, and we continuously need to have a 360-degree approach, as you rightly mentioned, and continuously kind of keep reinventing the wheel year after year, kind of what is working this year, what would work next year. But yeah, apprenticeship, at least it's part of the process. We all know it is there, so we can plan better. So with this, Sanjay and Mansi, I think we will end the session, and my sincere thanks to both of you for taking the time out and sharing your perspective on the industry. While overall, if I have to sum it up, yes, we all agree that there is going to be a huge demand. We all agreed that we need to start preparing today for the demand. Apprenticeship has been one of the model which has been working, but yes, we need to be innovative, definitely, in terms of how we are deploying apprentices, obviously. And Mansi, I mean, it should the shift from industry academia, as you rightly mentioned, has to change to academia industry, and that's when more degree linked work integrated programs, I think, should be able to should help organization build their future talent pipelines. With this, I thank everyone who has taken their time, all the participants who have taken their valuable time to join this session. I'm sure this session was valuable, and we all have some good key takeaways. At least I do have, definitely. So thank you once again. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Suhail. Thanks, Manasi. Thank you.
Thanks, Mansi. Thanks.